Hi, Greg Dell here with attorney Alexander Palomara, and we're going to discuss Mutual of Omaha and disability reviews of Mutual of Omaha. Now, Alex, on our website, we have many reviews about Mutual of Omaha, and we created this environment where people can share their experiences and thoughts about Mutual of Omaha. Point behind that was so that others could learn from that, hopefully to protect their benefits, help them avoid denials, help them reverse a denial if they get it based upon an experience that someone else has had. But what a lot of people like to know, what we want to share in this video is, what is our thought process about Mutual of Omaha? How do we go about dealing with them? What are things and trends that we see about them that are leading towards people sharing what is mostly negative experiences about Mutual of Omaha, although there certainly can be positive. So kind of a general overview of Mutual of Omaha here and our personal opinions. But when you get calls about Mutual of Omaha, you have a thought process because you've handled thousands of disability insurance claims and many Mutual of Omaha claims. So what do you think when someone calls and says, Alex, can you help me with my Mutual of Omaha disability claim?
Well, they're frustrated. I know they're frustrated because I deal with them on behalf of my clients and I get why they're frustrated, but they should know they're not alone and they should not be without hope, because while Mutual of Omaha is not one of the bigger disability insurance companies, we do handle many of those cases, and our track record for success in getting those cases reinstated. I have quite a few people on claim with Mutual of Omaha. So don't give up hope just because you're frustrated and they're treating you bad. There's definitely a lot of hope to get your claim reinstated if you have been denied benefits, or if you're going through a frustrating experience, we can help you work through it to make sure to keep them honest, to keep you on claim, make sure they're doing the right thing, and make sure that they're crossing all their T's, dotting all their I's to make sure that your claim is being treated as responsibly as possible. Because sometimes they try to get away with denying claims or doing a terrible job of gathering medical records, but I always have to remind people that it's ultimately your duty to prove to Mutual of Omaha that you are disabled or remain disabled, and it's your duty to provide them that proof. So there's hope, and I get why you're frustrated, because I get frustrated with them too, but we keep them as honest as possible, so don't give up.
So Mutual of Omaha, from some data I saw, about 350 to 400 million in collected premiums in the disability insurance world, puts them at in the top 15 of companies, but they're definitely one of the fastest growing companies out there for disability benefits. Most of their benefits are offered in the employer provided world, which means that employers provide it as a benefit to their employees. The premiums are usually cheap, so unlike a private disability policy that would cost 10 times as much that a person could go buy on their own, so you kind of get what you pay for. But we see universal trends from Mutual of Omaha in terms of the type of policy language that they're selling. We see consistency in the way in which they are handling claims, specifically also in the way in which they deny claims. From your experience in terms of handling so many Mutual of Omaha claims, what are some of the behaviors or manners in which Mutual of Omaha denies claims?
So first and foremost, most of these group policies have definitions of disability, what it means to be totally disabled. I have a couple of Mutual of Omaha claims that it's only an own occupation policy, meaning that if you prove that you can't do your own occupation, you are disabled. And what's actually interesting about, and they have other policies as well that have a change in definition of disability, that so for the first 2 years you have to prove you can't do your own occupation, but then after 2 years you have to prove you can't do any gainful occupation, which becomes more difficult to qualify. And the way they write their policies, it kind of states you have to be unable to do the duties of your own occupation, and if you're unable to earn 99% of your prior pre-disability earnings, then you're disabled, which is like, oh, I can't make 99%, they're going to surely find me to be disabled. So you think that it's a favorable term and easy to satisfy, but it's not, especially when there's that change in definition of disability to any gainful occupation. So first and foremost, you have to understand what it means to be disabled and how it can be difficult to prove. And another trick that they do a lot of times is that the own occupation standard is not how your job is performed it's not how your job is performed for your specific employer. So let's say you're a vice president at a casino. They don't care how it's done at your specific casino. It's how it's done in the general industry. They're going to discount a lot of the requirements that your employer has of you and say, no, that's not how it's done everywhere. It's how it's done everywhere. And they're going to dumb it down and make it harder for you to satisfy, because easier for them to deny your claims. They've dumbed it down so much. So just because it's an own occupation policy doesn't mean it's guaranteed. They kind of trick you into thinking that it's an easier claim to make, but especially that change in definition of disability becomes more difficult to qualify. The tactics they use is, they kind of lull people into a sense of security, saying, we're going to gather those records for you. Sign this authorization. We're going to gather those records, and we're going to prove it to ourselves that you're disabled. But that's just silly. You know, for them to prove it to themselves to pay you thousands of dollars per month, they're never going to do it. Or if they do it, they're going to do a half-assed job doing it. So it's always the claimant's responsibility to prove the case to the insurance company. Proof is typically in the form of medical documentation, support from the treating providers, as much objective evidence as possible. And you have to send it to them in multiple ways, because the other trick they do is, oh, we never got the records from your doctor. And your doctor's going to say, I faxed the records. And they're going to say, we never got it. So they play that trick. So the best thing you do is to ensure that the proof is sent to the insurance company, that you send it yourself or have us send it for you, and send it multiple ways so they can't do these tricks.
So along those lines of what you're saying when you talk about proof of the claim, a lot of the reviews on Mutual of Omaha that I see are they use their own doctors, they use their own nurses, or they hired some other doctor and they just reviewed my records. They didn't even examine me. They just denied my claim. How can they do this? And we always tell claimants, look, the law allows them to do this. They can use their own people. They don't have to examine you. They can defer to their own reviews over the opinions of your doctors. But there is a way to combat that and put yourself in the best position possible. And that way is when you go to the doctor, number one, you tell the doctor every single thing that's going on with you, every little complaint you're having. If you're having a neck or back problem, but your shoulder's bothering you also, or you're having headaches, but you haven't told the doctor, don't discount that and not think about it. Tell the doctor about that. Make sure the doctor is putting it in the records. If it's not in the records, it doesn't exist. It's completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter that you as the claimant tell Mutual of Omaha, oh, I'm having headaches, I'm having to take naps 3 times a day. But if it's not in your records, Mutual of Omaha doesn't care. They only look at the medical records. Why? Because they take the medical records. I often say that the Mutual of Omaha claim rep is just a paper pusher or organizer. Their job is just take whatever you send them, and then they're going to hire whoever they want, whether it's internal or external doctors, and send them your records. So we can't stress enough, if it's not in the records, it doesn't exist. The other problems we're seeing is medical records are all electronic now. I mean, for the most part. And the doctors use these forms, in their offices where things are already pre-checked. And the doctors just assume that from the last visit to the next visit to the next visit, some things stay checked or unchecked. And there could be you have fatigue. Well, in the records, the default is no fatigue. And your doctor never unchecked it. So when you go and you're telling Mutual of Omaha you have fatigue, well, they're going to say, but when you went to your doctor, the doctor specifically notes here, no fatigue. So you have to be very cautious of these electronic forms. You have to look at your medical records after every visit and be aware of what's going on, because if there's any little chance for Mutual of Omaha to deny the claim, they're going to seize on that opportunity and deny you. So, it seems simple when we talk about it here and say, make sure the medical records are right, but it's not simple, because doctors, you're one of 50 to 60 patients they're seeing in that given day. And they know you. They have sometimes a personal relationship with you, but they're not preparing medical records thinking that it's going to be scrutinized by an insurance company. But when it gets to the insurance company, it is highly scrutinized, looking not for information that supports your claim, looking for information that doesn't support your claim. So this is the biggest source of frustration that we see in reviews. They denied my claim, they didn't look at me, and they're just relying on other people's information, and they're ignoring all my doctors. Well, they're not necessarily ignoring all your doctors, they're looking at what's not in your records, because you can't ignore something that's in the records. But if it's not there, it's easy to say it's not there. So you have to be prepared to document appropriately.
You have to be verbal. When you're meeting with your doctor, you have to be as verbal as possible. You have to explain to your doctor that, listen, you're filing a claim for disability benefits. Because as you said earlier, the doctors aren't writing these records to prove to a doctor or an insurance company in an ivory tower that this person's disabled. They're writing these records to treat you. So they're not thinking that, if they leave something out, that it's going to hurt your
Right.
claim, or they don't even know about your claim. So make sure they're aware of your claim, and make sure that every single complaint you have, like when you see the doctors, it's not a time to be, tough guy, like, 1 to 10, how's your pain? 3. Now be honest as possible, because the only way you might be able to prove your claim is by these medical records. The only way you can actually prove your claim is by these medical records. So the time to be as verbal and as expressive as possible when you're meeting with your doctors. Make sure your doctor understands what you might be using these records for, and maybe your doctor has to understand what your, what the definition of disability is or what your occupation is.
Right.
And as Greg said earlier, when these independent doctors or in-house doctors from the insurance company, from Mutual of Omaha, go through the records, they're pointing out what's not in there. And it's the oldest trick in the book. It's one of their tricks. So you have to put as much as possible in the medical records so they can't get away with that tactic. And if they do get away with the tactic, when we do the appeal, we say, you're obviously using this terrible tactic saying what's not in there, but look what's in there, which you're obviously putting your head in the sand, ignoring all this other evidence that's in your medical records or in these medical records. So be as verbal as possible.
Well, one of the things I want to stress in this video in particular, where we're talking about our opinions of Mutual of Omaha, we've had great success on appealing them or filing lawsuits against them. So there is hope if the claim's been denied, and there are steps you can take to prevent a denial, but you have to be proactive and you have to push them. I do like, on a positive, that they're more of a smaller company, because I find at the bigger ones, it's just mass production. It's like an assembly line and they're just doing the same thing all the time. Mass Mutual's a little bit smaller, not as many policyholders. Mutual of Omaha is smaller, so they have the ability to manage their claims a little bit better, and they have
and answer the phones. Like if
yeah,
you deal with New York Life, they don't answer the phones, but
and they don't have as much turnover and things like that. Right. So you can get more attention to detail on a positive side if you're having an issue. It may not be a great result initially, but you definitely can get in touch with somebody. You can get them to review it, and having a lawyer represent you, you can get a little bit more attention because they're not as used to dealing with lawyers so much at Mutual of Omaha. So when someone's represented, they tend to give a lot more respect to that. So having a lawyer is a really good defense, and actually I would say an offense as well, because it makes the claimant go in the position of offense and having firepower against the company, when if you don't have that, then Mutual of Omaha is just like, they can take advantage of you and you don't have the ability to immediately respond to them. So I think there's a lot of things that we've discussed briefly here. We have more things on our website that people can look at, but clearly by other people sharing their experiences, look, we think we know almost everything that they're doing, but we don't represent everybody in the whole country. So when people share their experiences, others can be aware of new trends, new techniques, or things that they're doing. If we see a trend, then as a community we can come together and combat that, because we can say, look what happened to these 15 other people, and we can stop it.
Right.
We have before, and when we say we stop something that they're doing wrong, that benefits everyone else, because then their benefits get approved and continue as long as they need them.
Right. So if you're Mutual of Omaha, if they're messing with you, if you feel discouraged, don't feel discouraged. We can help you get back on claim. If they're messing with you, just know that we like to mess with the insurance companies. So it's what we do for a living, and I enjoy doing it.
So no matter where you live in the country, feel free to call Alex, myself. We always provide a free consultation, and we look forward to discussing your Mutual of Omaha claim with you.